Well, friends, Phase 2 Part 1 is drawing to a close, but not without an epic match that is going to be amazing and also has huge implications over the Western Clash. I'm Gillyweed back with Jay Howe for Endemic Esports versus Tempo Storm.
Leftovers did it earlier. Endemic, they're going to see if they can do the exact same thing. Leftovers, I don't want to say they had an easier opponent, Granite Gaming, but Endemic's got Tempo Storm, and I'd say Tempo Storm a little bit more troublesome than Granite Gaming. No offense, Granite Gaming. Best of luck in your future, but Tempo, whew.
Jay's gonna have so many angry GG tweets after this. Looking at the standings though, it's evidenced by the standings. They're there to back it up. Tempo Storm has only lost a single series to Heroes Hearth Esports. And what's interesting to me is that Endemic and Tempo both played Heroes Hearth Esports last weekend. And Heroes Hearth said that of the two matches, Endemic brought more of a fight to them.
But yeah. Tempo's drafts last week, you and I were walking in today and we're talking about our matchups, and I don't think either one of us were convinced that we saw the same Tempo Storm that we're used to last weekend.
I think you could say that through a lot of this part. I don't think it's fair to say what some people have been saying that you know, like Fan will bring up. It's back, hashtag Fan. But Fan will bring up is that we're not the just bottomed out, terrible Tempo Storm. We've still won every match except losing to Heroes Hearth Esports. But what I will say is that both of those teams and how they approached Heroes Hearth felt differently. Tempo Storm drafted Cho'Gall, they drafted Valera. They were trying to approach it as the underdog in that match, whereas Endemic, they drafted to what has been working for them, the triple melees. And that was just an interesting concept to think about, is that Endemic took a game off of them where Tempo Storm could not.
I complimented Tempo Storm when we went to Midseason Brawl because most of the tournaments they had gone to, if you look back to last year, every time they showed up to an international event, we would hear, we've got some killer drafts prepared. We're coming in hot. We're going to do this crazy thing. I think they ran a Zarya comp at either the Clash or BlizzCon opening week last week. And then they were like, well, what if we just came out and we were just the better team? And they used their meta. They used the general picks that we know are there, and they came out and they played more standard. And when they played more standard, their talent started to shine. They started to reach levels that we haven't seen for a while in North America. And when you have to revert back to strategies like that, that means that you don't have the same confidence going toe-to-toe with people. And that always surprises me because I still think this team has tremendous potential, and they will show it at Western Clash. I just still can't wrap my head around the drafts last week.
Well, we'll see what the drafts are going to be. But first, one half of the Finn duo is Fan. The other's Vin. We're going to hear from him and Dansky about the last match of Part 1 of Phase 2.
Well, pretty much we're going to be giving it our all this weekend. I mean, if we don't win, we're not going to be able to prove ourselves at the Western Clash. We were hoping we could win against Heroes Hearth, but I think we kind of choked. Hopefully against Tempo Storm, we don't choke. The one thing that's very different about Tempo is they're having Sway draft, so I noticed their draft style and picks are a lot different than what it was before with Psalm drafting. That kind of has me worried, but I think we're probably just going to draft what we know and should be fine.
Endemic, I think they're for sure a strong team. Each individual is mechanically gifted, but with the triple bans, the whole meta is shifting. Like, everyone's trying to find their style. With the performance against Heroes Hearth, they had a really strong showing, and I know this is going to be a really tough matchup. And I know even though we're good friends with these guys, it's basically business, and I'm sure they'll have some secret strats against us, but we'll be ready.
Vin says they'll be ready for whatever Endemic can throw at the team. Though Endemic has been pretty much just playing pretty standard from what we've seen so far. And the big thing for Endemic, that has always been the big thing for Endemic, is the idea of consistency. And I feel like in bringing on Kjær and Dansky, this team has finally found that consistency.
Their drafting looks more solid, I think, overall, and that's where it starts. And then their play. We've seen some shot calling. The Dragonshire game last week was a little confusing to me, but their decision-making overall is better. They still have to fine-tune a lot of things. So for them, if they can pick up the 2 wins here, which is all that they need, win or lose the series, if they get those 2, they can continue to establish their name, establish who they are as a team at the Western Clash. If not, they have a lot of work to do in the downtime.
Well, they won on Sky, and they took Tomb to 34 minutes. We're going to start on Tomb of the Spider Queen again. Between both of these teams, this will be picked by Tempo Storm. The bans, standard for what we know of the bans to be. Sky Temple for Tempo Storm seems to be the new Battlefield of Eternity, and then Volskaya Foundry for Endemic. The last thing I'll say about both of the matches for these teams versus Heroes Hearth Esports, and where I feel like that consistency has finally come in for Endemic, is that Endemic did push Heroes Hearth to the limits, and it was down to the little things that we talked about Heroes Hearth yesterday that ultimately I feel was the reason why Heroes Hearth went away the victor in that series. Those little things like punishing any overextensions, any staying extra time for Endemic, that we know that as this roster stays together longer, they're going to work those things out.
Tempo Storm, they're probably as good at Heroes Hearth about doing a lot of those little things very well.
They are.
If not better. I would say that Tempo Storm beat them first to that, and that's one of the major factors. And going in saying you still got 4/5 of the team, and I had the pleasure to speak to Vin this week for that interview, and I mean pleasure. He was a treat to talk to, very open about where he knows he is in this team. I can't help but root for the guy now. Very good. He understands his role. He understands where he wants to be and where his team is leading him to be. And when he starts picking up all of those little things, we mentioned it when we compared him and saw him before, this team, the sky is still the limit for Tempo Storm as we get the bans underway.
Those bans are Diablo and Genji. Added to that is Tassadar for Endemic. It's an interesting one to see that Tassadar ban. Tomb is a Tempo Storm favored battleground. It's one that they have liked to pick for a while. It's also a favored one for them. Banning Sky Temple feels like it hurts Endemic a lot more than the Volskaya Foundry ban hurts Tempo Storm. Tempo has not had the same priority on Volskaya ever since the map changes, the laning changes with the towers. With Urel banned, Endemic first picks Phoenix. The first pick Phoenix trend continues, J-Hound.
No surprise, overall control. We do still have Jimmy Rayner available now. Tassadar being taken away. We do know in the past that Fan has loved to play the TAS Tracer on this battleground and has shown. We even saw them play the TAS Vala on this battleground, as Blaze will be the pickup, and Garrosh, a very early Garrosh pickup here.
Curious, considering how many people have shied away. Everyone has shied away from Garrosh, especially with so many heroes that make it hard for him to get into position. We'll see what Tempo can do to rectify that later on.
Could opt if you are worried about the salvo. You have the double down potential at 13. We have seen a lot of Groundbreaker, and Chromie does well because Garrosh has a long distance to go to cover the distance to get onto Chromie. Phoenix has the slows to deal with it, and then when you're stationary lacking mobility, Chromie will drop bombs on you all day, will continue to stack up against you. So Chromie, a natural counter towards Garrosh for a lot of folks.
Both Johanna and Muradin are still available for B-Kid. I'm wondering if Tempo Storm takes one of those away here. Johanna would take away the Wave Clear. Muradin would take away the setup Stormbolt for the follow-up damage, the follow-up Chromie Bombs, the Deckard Cain follow-up Crowd Control. They'll take Johanna. Still leaves Muradin up, but that may... It's not as much Wave Clear, but they still have Phoenix. They still have the possibility for Chromie, depending if she wants to use her cooldowns for that.
Time for Triple Warrior, Muradin, Bruiser, Assassin style. Rayner gets the ban. And so the Johanna ban, the Iron Skin, if you get flipped in, you can Iron Skin walk away from a lot of follow-up beyond that. Muradin can still Dwarf Toss out, but if you do get the proper follow-up, we might get a Malfurion here for some roots. Alex Straza we've seen a lot of Alex Straza as of late. We'll see if June wants to go that route.
Greymane, maybe 2. Follow-up on the top. Gul'dan. This is...
very different.
so different for Tempo Storm. No Tomorrow's like the only Gul'dan favoring team.
And Chromie versus a Gul'dan has always favored Chromie.
Stationary target.
You have to life tap to get mana back. And Chromie was like, well, if you're not going to be at 100% health, I will target you. Temporal Loop, potentially, although slowing Sands with the salvo.
Yeah, there's a Blaze there. Bunker to save that. Murden and Leoric, the last 2 picks for Endemic.
The Leo has, there are 3 heroes now that all get countered by Leo due to lack of mobility. Garrosh, percentage-based damage in the form of draining life. That sounds good to me. Gul'dan and Malfurion, good luck getting away from a Wraith-walking Leo that's coming in with an Entomb.
Aha. Tempo Storm returns to Maiev type composition on Tomb. It was something that was more favored for them on Tomb and Dragonshire at the beginning of the phase. And though it was somewhat shied away from, they're going to go back to that. Horrify is going to be a great way of means of trying to get kills, of setup. They've got Warlord's Challenge too. You have a lot of crowd control with Blaze and Malfurion to add to that. And then, of course, Maiev with a Warden's Cage. It's just such a different composition from what we're used to from Tempo Storm, except the Maiev.
Well, Dansky did say that he believes Swoy is drafting for them, as we know that he is coaching that team now. So drafts look different. And absent here is the Hanzo, which was one of the pairings that they used with the Maiev previously. That's when we saw one of the big coming out parties for Ven when he hit that monster Dragon Arrow onto the Spider Queen earlier this year, earlier this phase.
Well, this is a Maiev picked into a Leoric. We've seen that Vault of the Wardens won't always save you when it comes to an Entomb. But it's Tempo Storm and Maiev, something they feel very comfortable with. Tempo Storm is in the blue. Garrosh played by Caterpillar. Fan playing that Maiev. Malfurion on June. Vin playing Gul'dan. Glaurung on Blaze.
For Endemic, 2 wins and you are in. That is it. That's all you need. Dansky will be trying to bring the pain. He'll be on the Phoenix. Cure, of course, back on the melee role. He'll be on the Leo. Biggie on the Chromie. Michael Udall, new support here for this team. He'll be on the Deckard Cain, and B-Kid, he'll be on the Murden. And we know Murden and B-Kid, a long history together.
Yeah, there are a lot of high impact heroes when you look at who's playing what for Endemic. B-Kid on that Murden is one of them. Dansky on Falstad and what he's able to do prepping lanes is a big reason why that consistency in shot calling has been so successful for Endemic. Michael Udall has made some great plays with his Deckard Cain. Biggie, looking at him and his Chromie, has been terrorizing all of HGC NA. The Leoric, that's a newer one. We'll see how Cure fares on it.
The Leo, I think, is really strictly because of the lack of if that's
Sure.
a Hanzo versus a Gul'dan, we're probably seeing something different. But I really like the Leo pickup here.
I agree. Tempo Storm's using that Gul'dan and the wave clear they have to try to get a lead and a good setup over this top turn-in point. Do that and they can work on those microtransactions of turn-ins with their gems. Also, it sets up so that possibly they have a more risky Endemic trying to come through for rotations and stop that, and that could be a place where maybe Cattle or Fan can get a bind or a throw to try to set up and get an early kill.
I think one thing that's weird to me is that both teams have reasonably good wave clear, but neither of them have even B-Kid's like, you're going to toss me out, I'm jumping back in. It's a lot of damage going on to Cattle, but neither can necessarily walk over to camps and get those down very quick. And so the sneaky backdoor on the siege camp that we're seeing now from the Maiev, that's really it. Like, that is probably the only hero outside of a Phoenix that we can see making those types of moves.
Yeah, and with Dansky firmly planted in that top lane, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon until he gets that cleared, and then maybe we'll see him rotate back with something like Deckard Cain to get the bruisers if they want to try to get that and push that out so that they can have time when they start looking at getting a turn-in, having more of the control of that mid lane between the 2 turn-in points. Those Giants are taking a while to be dealt with by Kier, and this gives Glowering some time to put some damage in this bottom lane. Taking out a tower, Kier falling low. Michael Udall is going to come in and start healing him up. Glowring's doing it pretty well in the solo lane.
Could potentially empower the first Web Weavers if Tempo Storm does get those to get that structure and experience lead. The fights have been fairly limited. The skirmishes up until this point as Cattle sidestep action, but the Echoed Corruption now sitting at 15 stacks.
16 on Chromie's Sandblast. We know we'll be keeping an eye on that, and Caterpillar, who has had to take a ton of poke every time he tries to step forward around these turn-in points. 48 armor before he starts being healed back up. Kier's gonna come in, take some damage there before both solos start to move back down. And ENDEMIC has started to get a lead in the gems turned in, though Tempo Storm has enough for an actual turn-in. ENDEMIC's not far behind. Tether there.
June has made so many small plays to keep his team alive. He ate that Sandblast from Chromie. There, he put the roots down to keep Biggie at bay when Cattle almost died. He is making heads-up plays while his team is being punished in the early game by Biggie on that Chromie right now.
Yeah, and the Dansky poke. The poke from ENDEMIC is insane to deal with for Tempo Storm. And yeah, they have things like Vault of the Wardens, the armor of Caterpillar, but when they get that low, they tax June. It takes a while to heal back up, and then they have to head back. Keeping some presence over B-Kid here. They get the tether, then the stun. Stormbolt out. He knew that Glowering was looking for that jet propulsion.
That's
a
good.
Nice stun from B-Kid.
You love to see plays like that.
Oh, yeah. Ban.
Oh.
First blood.
Oh.
First blood with the pulse bomb. Not the pulse bomb. The long range attack, phase bomb. And a great root and a huge slow too with the Sapphire. The slow of the Herodric Cube gets B-Kid out.
Yeah, but Cattle tossed that minion over. He's trying to get a slow, trying to see if he can get Ben close enough to get the follow-up damage. But the back and forth battle of these teams and the contention over the turn-ins, both of these teams have had the high priority on defending. And with that kill and the damage in return from ENDEMIC, they have obtained the first Web Weavers of this game.
Right at level 8, Chromie has slowing sands too. Can put that on a gate and stop people from being able to defend as easily, especially with more of a melee style comp with that Maiev too. Web Weaver in mid, drops right down by the towers. ENDEMIC trying to get the top to move into the same position so that they can get as much structural damage done as possible. Biggie has been loading up these Sandblast stacks as the Dragon Eye Indomitable has to be forced just to get out of the slow, the quicksands of Chromie, because this poke has been nuts.
He's had to use that more times in the early game than I think he would like. Michael Udall and team, they are diving deep on Glowrung. The minions have moved forward, so Glowrung's stuck in a difficult spot.
25
as
gems.
B-Kid comes over. Ben is going to be saved, but the slow, no root in time. But ENDEMIC is coming out in full force against Tempo Storm.
They're not done yet. Body blocks on Caterpillar and Tomb as heroics come online. Cattle now the next to fall. 2 kills all around this bottom fort by ENDEMIC that they're willing to dive the fort. This team is looking for that Western Clash spot. They're bringing it to Tempo Storm.
If my caster math is correct, that was around 45, give or take a few gems that were lost between Glowrung and Caterpillar. That is a massive setback in the early game. And the experience lead now for ENDEMIC. If they get another turn in, which they are just 5 gems short, all of those range there, that's 5 enough. If they do get another turn in and they can start to get both forts down, then we're starting to stretch towards 13. And that talent lead that is so difficult to come back from.
Well, Tempo moved quickly to get in position, especially after seeing that the bottom camp was taken, but now another Entomb. Bunker will be there just to weather the storm. Sitting in the middle of that Tranquility too, he starts to heal Tempo back up, so they might get another shot at this. Still have Horrify, Warden's Cage, and the Warlord's Challenge. A lot of different ways to start a fight here.
Turn in bot. There's going to be a couple short. Biggie has those. If ENDEMIC can get both of these forts down and the minions along with them, and Tempo Storm is going to try and keep that from happening by picking up the bruisers here. And they get 13. They will have control over the turn-in points for a long time while Tempo Storm still tries to catch up.
Major upswing in the game for ENDEMIC. If they can get these down, they have a lot of wave clear. Dansky keeping the top pushed. Bruisers taken to let Tempo Storm keep this middle lane if possible. This middle lane, having the fort here lets you have a lot more presence in the turn-ins back and forth with the rotations there. Entomb used. We're gonna see it first instance of the Warden's Cage from Fan. Biggie running for his life. The bunker there is gonna keep Cattle alive for the moment. Biggie turning this around on Fan. The rest of the team starting to follow up there. Sandblast connects. He teleports, blinks away to his spirit in the nick of time this whole time.
Is he willing to commit? Oh, the roots will keep him.
Yeah, but this whole time, Tempo Storm goes in for a fight, has to cycle all the way back around. You look at that top web weaver. It took down the fort. ENDEMIC more than happy to fight calculatingly because they know that they have the web weavers beyond this.
They're going to turn their attention to the middle, will ENDEMIC, and that 13 talent tier is now here for ENDEMIC. They will have control for a while, and they can control the turn-in points. They can even pick up a boss. For Tempo Storm, the counterplay is generally to get a turn-in. I don't think ENDEMIC has enough tools to deny that turn-in during this period.
Tempo does have things like
they're coming in.
Horrify,
Never mind.
Taunt, but instead they have quite a few gems, and they already have 25 turned in, so they'll just get the web weavers, and the first web weavers nullify the boss, and then help them try to catch back up.
Yeah, it buys you time. That's the number one thing you get. It buys you time and it buys you real estate. Maev's already pushing out the bottom. The top obviously has the boss in it. But it gets you back to 13. It gets you on even talent tiers. And then it puts you in position at the end of this to have lanes pushed out enough to where you can contend for another turn-in. Obviously, they lost a lot of gems in the early going, but they're still sitting on 50 plus beyond this and will continue to stack up. So map control, we'll see how it looks at the end of this, but right now the boss being dealt with by Tempo Storm.
5 stacks away from Echoed Corruption completing, well in advance of where it needs to be for Ruinous Affliction at 16. 41 stacks at the 60 necessary to start getting an Echo for the additional damage of Chromie and more Sandblasts. Biggie looking really nice in the stacks of where he's gotten so far. A lot of that revolving around just the fights, the pokes around the turn-in point too. Jet Propulsion out. Here could have tried to maybe catch him out of that with the Entomb, but of course there was always still the effect of the bunker being able to get him away from that, so Kier stays patient.
Phoenix doing his best to clear out the bottom as the rotation and focus will now be here in the top. Kier uses the Wraith walk away, has that unstoppable. And if you look at all the lanes, the reason they're leaving Phoenix in that mid bot is not only to double soak for experience, but to keep those lanes at bay. Had Phoenix not been there, and this is the part that I like the most about ENDEMIC, those lanes were pushed up to the midway point, which is where Tempo Storm wanted those to be. They can still get it back to that point pretty easily, but they keep control and they buy themselves time and opportunities for ENDEMIC, and they tried to find one right there on Glaurung.
That's not only always ENDEMIC, that's always Dansky. That is his role on this team, and he does it phenomenally. B-Kid's gonna Dwarf Toss out after being in the Glaurung sandwich, one end of that. Biggie uses timeout, but the poke is severe. Purification Salvo, stay a while and listen, keeps Caterpillar, so he takes max damage from that. Horrify hits Dansky, but the rest of ENDEMIC are fine to keep this fight going. Double stun from B-Kid shows he's done with that. Quest at 1, and now getting the rest of the damage. Hits another stun, takes down Maiev. Caterpillar, the poke from ENDEMIC. It started strong, it's still going strong, and Tempo Storm are on the run.
B-Kid just has to get in position.
He's there.
The slow is there. Cattle gets the Nature's Cure. He gets the taunt. B-Kid goes in. That's another takedown here for ENDEMIC. They're already pinging to grab this camp. In the top, Glaurung did sneak in the turn-in on the backside, and they did not proc that camp. They pinged it, but he didn't auto-attack it. That is a setback in defense. Yes, they got 2 kills. They took a lot of gems away from Tempo Storm, but that right there would have helped so much in the defense and more control. They're still in control with a full level lead. A small missed opportunity, though.
Well, the wave clear is still there from ENDEMIC to clear this out quickly, but what this does do for Tempo Storm is buy time. My fear is every web weaver phase thus far for Tempo has been to buy time, whereas ENDEMIC has taken out 2 forts and been able to get a lot done with those web weaver phases. But for Tempo, that they are trying to stack up Gul'dan, that may just be enough for them so that they can start the turnaround in this game.
Top and mid are dealt with, and the bottom fort will likely fall. And that is it as B-Kid continues to try and live in the back line. There's the Echoed Corruption finishing, doing a lot of poison damage, actually forcing out the Avatar. Tranquility out as well as the Entomb is there. The taunt onto Leo. If they can get the takedown onto Leo, we've dropped some gems. The fight rages on, though.
Horrify hits, but it pushes everyone the other way. Maiev dealt with finally. This fight happened in multiple fronts, but ENDEMIC are the ones that stabilize back together.
Wow.
Largely because they keep Cure alive, and largely because B-Kid went back and forth. He went to the back when he needed to defend his team and then set up for more of the kills. The fight for Tempo Storm, focus on Leo while you had the Maev's cage in the back. Just not quite able to get a kill where they needed, and now ENDEMIC getting that 4-man kill. Everyone but Blaze there is enough for them to start getting some camps. They're turning in gems. They're looking for another web weaver phase, and they're prepping the lanes. They're doing everything right.
They're getting all the camp skilling. They are trying, outside of the one on the side of Tempo Storm, not enough time there. But getting these camps and getting the turn in will have the lane so pushed out that the top lane, because that boss was there in the early web weaver phase, I believe that entire keep wall is down, which is why we see the focus for Leo in the top lane to get that pushed out. The top lane is also the boss lane, which is a potential win condition. That all the way down. ENDEMIC will likely set their sights to the top lane. You can already see the Chromie traps at level 18 now are in flank positions to make sure that any rotation up will be thwarted by those and give them the indicator as the mid fort falls. The top might not soon be far behind.
Well, that mid fort was the only retreat path for Tempo Storm, so it's welcome to take that down for ENDEMIC, and they set this lane so far that they've done keep damage before the web weaver has even arrived. Start to back slightly. Tempo Storm scaring them away, playing patiently.
The Echoed Corruption is helping, but my goodness.
I remember versus Heroes Hearth, ENDEMIC were in this position and did not get the keep. I don't think they're going to walk away without a keep, not this time. Force the bunker, Horrify hits, it's on Dansky, warps out in time right into the Warden's cage, but still enough that he escapes the throes of Tempo Storm. I don't know how he did that there, but now ENDEMIC turn around and blast down Blaze.
Oh, there's the lock-in. Cure has 2 members locked in the Entomb. The Ice Block will keep the salvo from hitting, but it will not keep the follow-up damage there. And ENDEMIC, they will find themselves 1 game closer to Western Clash as Gilly, look at the scoreboard. This is a blank, a 13-0 shutout on Tomb of the Spider Queen for ENDEMIC.
Had ENDEMIC kept that bottom fort, it would have been the perfect game. It pretty much was a perfect game anyway, because they dealt with some web weavers. It's hard to keep all your forts alive when you do with multiple web weaver phases, but that looked so strong from ENDEMIC, and I give it, part of it was the draft for them. The shot calling was good, the wave clear was excellent, the prepping of waves, and that ENDEMIC takes what didn't work, what was a problem for them versus Heroes Hearth on Tomb, comes in and defeats Tempo Storm on the very same map the next weekend. It's looking pretty for ENDEMIC, just 1 game away.
B-Kid continues to impress me more and more. I really worried about his move back to the warrior role. I'm still not putting him at the top by any means, but him in the early game set up really a large portion of that. And it was more of the support roles of the support player and the frontliners that allowed Dansky and Biggie, who Biggie was extremely accurate that game, just dished out so much punishment in the early game that Tempo Storm, every time they stepped forward, they took 3 steps backwards because they're like, because this hurts, I can't keep moving in. That's one of the plights of Garrosh, because how do you step forward if you can't engage? And Gul'dan, we know, doesn't bring a lot of damage. Maiev, neither. It's a setup play. That's why the Maiev Gul'dan combo kind of surprised me in the draft. I think the draft overall surprised both of us. But ENDEMIC played their draft so well, and B-Kid on the front line, and then Cure, once mid to late game started to come into play, he was controlling so much of those fights, and there was nothing that Tempo Storm could do.
Well, an old Tempo Storm Maiev composition pre-MSB and even at MSB would have been Jaina there instead of that Gul'dan. The Gul'dan is the big question mark for me. We'll see if that continues. Checking in at, I believe, the standings is something that we're going to look at. That game is a nice one for ENDEMIC. Every game matters. You can see Team Octalysis sitting at 3-4. If ENDEMIC lose the series, they'll also be at 3-4. But if they win one more game, then they would be losing it 3-2, which puts them at the exact same 15-14, and the head-to-head is what comes after match score, game differential, head-to-head. ENDEMIC took that versus Octalysis. That was a close one, but you know, if ENDEMIC can't end up getting one more game win, you know what series that I think they will be looking back on and be mad about?
Simplicity.
Losing to Simplicity.